If you're a trans female and have kids, you're a mom. You're no less a mom than anyone else. Okay, so insist upon your identity.
It is genuinely all so tiresome. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. And as per usual, before we launch in, today's video is sponsored by Factor. And of course by me and my tea company, Lions Tea Exchange. As most of you know by now, we make handcrafted artisan teas right here in the US of A. I put a lot of love into this company and I'd love for you to check it out and the blends we have, and I will pop a link in the description box. Now, this might sound dramatic, but I am of the opinion that linguistically, culturally, and medically, motherhood is being attacked. And it's funny because this topic and this issue specifically is not actually a new one, and it's been both championed and attacked over the decades by different groups of people for different reasons. Like at one point, actually at a bunch of points, feminists were running around like motherhood is a prison and pregnancy is slave labor and everything is the Handmaid's Tale. And I'm sure there's some people even now who would agree with that. So suffice it to say, pregnancy, motherhood, children, child rearing, all of these things bring out all sorts of opinions from all sorts of people. But something that I personally have noticed over the last number of years is that motherhood is not venerated in the same way that it was maybe only a couple decades ago. So it seems like the seeds for the contempt of motherhood were definitely planted long ago. But it also seems with the recent popularity of things like gender ideology and surrogacy, that seed germinated into something truly horrific, and that's putting it mildly. Now, it's not enough that motherhood is resented, it's actively mocked. And what made me want to talk about this was a series of recent viral videos, which I'm sure some of you may have already seen, showing a man with ample lip filler cradling his newborn surrogate baby moments after birth. This guy also appeared on a Trolley episode on YouTube talking about how his own sister is his surrogate.
My sister Brianna is carrying both our twins.
Personally, I think that's really weird, but apparently I'm alone in that, which, I'm not gonna lie, kind of surprises me. I didn't realize how many of you are weirdos. That's right. I'm passing judgment. People were understandably outraged by all of this, not just over the surrogacy component, but because this guy filmed himself in a hospital bed and also in a wheelchair as though he had been the one who had struggled through hours of painful labor giving birth to these children. In yet another video, he's seen holding one of the newborns in a way that one might hold a prop, not a baby.
Nathan is with Dylan in the NICU and I'm in the room with Kyle. And they're just perfect. I love them so much. They're gorgeous. They're already so advanced, so perfect.
The moment I saw these videos, admittedly, I was not impressed. Not just because these children were deprived of the fundamental moments with their mother, but also because this seems to be part of a wider trend of men in hospital beds acting like birthing mothers after buying a baby right out of a woman's womb. Not that I want to have a conversation here about surrogacy just yet, because apparently everyone has an opinion on that. But it made me think of all the ways and examples where motherhood has been redefined, mocked, parodied, or just actively disparaged. So that's what we're going to talk about today, the ongoing parody and degradation of motherhood. But before you once again board my hell gondola and together we traverse this river down into the depths of weirdness and confusion, let's hear from today's sponsor, Factor. Eating is a necessity if you want to live, but that requires knowing what to cook, making shopping lists, and if you're not the best cook, making yourself bland, healthy meals. But thankfully, eating well doesn't have to be a headache, thanks to Factor. Factor makes eating good, healthy food easy by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your home. Factor offers a range of options, from breakfast all the way through to dessert. Because of this, they have over 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, so you always have the ability to try new things. Not to mention, Factor meals feature premium ingredients and the meals are actually assembled by real chefs, which makes a huge difference in taste, consistency, and freshness. I've actually tried a bunch of these meal services, but where Factor is different is in the fact that the food is real. It isn't mushy nonsense paste, and it genuinely tastes delicious and smells delicious. I'm also a cereal lunch skipper out of sheer laziness, so having Factor solves that problem for me, and I don't have to worry about running to the shop or wondering what I'm going to make. So if you too like yummy food, then head over to factor75.com or click the link in the description and use code Sydney50 for 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code Sydney50 at factor75.com for 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. I personally believe that motherhood has been under attack for some time. And as most of you probably already know, because I have talked about it again and again, a lot of it started with language changes, referring to women as birthing persons, egg producers, and gestational carriers. I even found one particularly painful video where a man is trying to explain pregnancy and calling women host bodies.
There's a host body, and that host body has to have a certain amount of rights, because at the end of the day, it is that body that carries this entire other body to term. The question is, what is the value of that life, and is it subordinate to the value of its host body?
That you had.
Like we are incubating chest-busting aliens or something. Blah.
Oh God!
The language started making its way into actual medical and political spheres. Suddenly, nobody wanted to say women and mothers.
All pregnant and birthing people deserve to be treated with.
Okay, well, Michael, do you know what the leading cause of death for pregnant people is?
Pregnant people? Mm-hmm. Mothers? Women?
If you'd like to call them mothers, not all of them are mothers, but if you'd like to call them that.
What are they if they're not mothers?
They're pregnant people.
What people other than mothers are pregnant?
Back in 2022, a trans activist called Nori Mae Welby called for Mother's Day to be renamed in order to be more inclusive. Mae Welby suggested Nurturer's Day so as to include men who give birth. A few years earlier, in 2020, an individual called Bennett Casper Williams kicked off at hospital staff after giving birth. The nurses reportedly kept calling Casper Williams, who identifies as a man, Mom. I hate it here. And as most of you probably already know, the reason for all of this is to be inclusive, to use gender-neutral language. Because in a culture where a female can give birth and then claim to be a father, and a male can step into the role of mother, it is apparently very important that this tiny portion of the population feel gender-affirmed.
There needs to be space in the birthing world that allows me to show up as a birthing person.
And to paraphrase a particularly good part of a 2019 Spiked article, given that virtually every pregnancy involves someone in possession of their female reproductive organs, the attempt to eliminate the term pregnant woman and female language around pregnancy is driven by more than the existence of a tiny minority of transgender individuals. It is driven by a determination to separate women from motherhood. Now, none of this has ever been fine, but if we could have stopped here, the damage would have felt a lot less catastrophic. Who am I kidding? It would have been the same. But it didn't stop there, and things went on to get much worse. The growing trend of detaching female biology from pregnancy and motherhood is now in full swing. And this ongoing confusion over gender and sex means people are not only calling into question the distinction between men and women, but allowing motherhood in general to be parodied even further. And frankly, it's a little terrifying the speed at which the gender movement went from being an obscure fringe group of people to being so prominent we can't get away from it no matter how hard we try. Towards the end of March 2024, my outlet The Publica published an article about a research study that followed a 50-year-old male who identifies as a woman who induced lactation to breastfeed a child. No, this is not a joke. This child also happened to be this individual's grandchild. Real talk, what mother is letting this happen? And how do you even broach this with someone? Hello, Susan. As you know, I am a woman now and I wish to feed my grandchild. Please hand him over. The scientific case report from Breastfeeding Medicine essentially outlined how this individual induced lactation in an effort to achieve gender affirmation. And this was subsequently studied for whatever reason. And if this sounds crazy to you, males inducing lactation in order to breastfeed children and be more gender affirmed, unfortunately, is pretty well documented. In fact, some of you might remember back in February, a leaked letter from the National Health Service Trust in the UK claimed that milk produced by a trans-identified male is just as good for babies as a mother's breast milk. In addition to describing the drug-induced nipple discharge produced by males on cross-sex hormones as human milk, the University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust, which that is very hard to say, also called it the ideal food for infants.
This study centres a trans woman who successfully breastfed her baby. She induced lactation via hormone therapy, using domperidone as a galactagogue, breast pumping, and then directly breastfeeding her infant. She co-fed with her partner, the baby's gestational parent, meaning the parent who carried the pregnancy, for the infant's first 4 months of life. When compared with average nutritional values of breast milk expressed by cisgender women 10 to 12 weeks after delivery, values that were taken from a large systematic review of milk analysis, these breast milk samples showed nutritional values that were equal to or higher for fat, protein, lactose and calories.
When people find out that trans people can actually do this, I think it creates the same kind of outrage as the first lesbian kiss on television, that there's a social change happening. You're being the best parent that you can be, and don't ever forget that.
Depressingly, I actually found a bunch of people talking about this, continually making the claim that these two milks have the same nutritional value. And it's like, do people not realize how complex female biological processes are? Like, how complex breastfeeding is and the amazing things that the female body can do while producing milk to sustain and feed and nourish an infant? Like, are we just gonna pretend that the female body can't do neato things with pathogens and then create antibodies to give to baby? Like, what are we doing here? There was even this video that popped off in mid-2023 where a trans-identified individual called Naomi discusses inducing lactation and being a mother.
I'm gonna be a mother. That's in the works, in the process, and part of that process is that I am working to induce lactation to be able to breastfeed our youngest child. Yeah, actually mommy Naomi. I've actually already successfully induced lactation. Like, I can actually make milk now, which has been a very interesting and very cool experience. It's like very biologically affirming too, which is something that's like gatekept from trans women, like so difficult.
Apparently, Naomi's stepchild was also breastfed by Naomi. I hate it here. But of course, not all of this revolves around biological males trying to breastfeed babies. And I'm quite glad for that, honestly. There is also this general mockery of pregnancy that genuinely boils my blood.
I've been thinking a lot lately about the part of the trans femme experience that is you have to mourn the fact that you cannot give birth, you cannot get pregnant, you cannot have your own children. And as much as that doesn't really apply to me and my needs anymore, like I know I don't want to have children, I know I shouldn't have children, but when the hormones are flowing through my blood, you know, and that estrogen spikes and that progesterone gets added in, like, all I want is to have a baby, even though that's not what I want. It's what the hormones want. It's that motherly instinct, which I've always felt connected to, but I never felt connected to fatherhood. Fatherhood never made any sense to me. And then when I transitioned, all my brain could think about is that I want to participate in the beautiful thing that makes the female gender generally so unique, is that we can give life, but I can't. And that doesn't take away from me being a woman at all. That would be discounting the experience of millions of AFAB people that cannot give birth. But it does make me bummed out, though. But, you know, we get to dream about it. We just turned it into a kink.
Sometimes it's hard to believe that these people put these videos on the internet voluntarily. Like, they choose to record it, upload it, and then they knowingly hit publish. Maybe don't do that.
We just turned it into a kink.
In my searches of the internet, I came across video after video of individuals joking about getting uterus transplants.
The first trans woman to have a successful uterus transplant, ovaries and eggs included, and I want to be the first trans woman to have an abortion.
It's all so tiring. This individual, called Addie in particular, has posted several videos on TikTok claiming to be the recipient of a uterus transplant.
I decided, can I film?
Mm-hmm.
To get a uterus transplant. This is crazy.
Okay.
Okay. Wish me luck.
Which, as far as I know, is absolute nonsense, given that the first uterus transplant wasn't even performed until, I'm pretty sure, 2014, and fewer than 50 of them have been performed since. Not to mention, if you are in fact a male who gets a uterus transplant, then what are you gonna do with that there, friend? How are you gonna use that? What's gonna go on there? In other clips, Addie jokes about getting a neo-vagina, only to have it ripped open again by a baby, jokes about being several days post-op from uterus transplant surgery, and claims that this surgery will result in being a biological woman. Well, we've all got some news for you, friend. No. In another video, Addie discusses this procedure and says that no matter how much surgical work is done, including a uterus transplant, people still don't view trans-identified individuals as women.
Always knew that I wanted to be a mom, but I really always have the instinct of wanting to carry my child. Giving birth, I can't have children, and I get it repeated to me as an insult over and over again. Me sitting here telling people that I have been years on hormones, had the surgery, yet I still get called male. And if I get a uterus, I'm still not a woman. What makes a woman? Organs do not define your gender. Newsflash, a lot of women can't have children or even have a uterus.
I find it really upsetting when people make comments like this, and something that I always come back to is that non-functioning female anatomy is still female anatomy. Even absent female anatomy, as in the case of women who've gotten hysterectomies or mastectomies and what have you, this doesn't negate that that woman is female, and that every cell in their body is programmed to be female. And this rolls me around to the trans-identified individuals who transition and then want to be called mothers. Some of you might remember a clip from a few years ago where trans TikToker Dylan Mulvaney made comments about wanting to have kids and to be a mum. It reminds me, every time I see it, of all the women and children who suddenly have to contend with husbands and fathers deciding that they too are women. I've seen countless anecdotal stories across the internet of women lamenting how hard it was for them when their husbands turned around and wanted to be addressed as a mother and called mum by their children.
My dad is now transitioned into a female, and now my mum. I can't really remember what she was as a male, but it's been like a couple years now, and it's just, it feels like normal.
Remember she one time told me that when I give her money, I'm her daddy. But when I cook for her, I take care of her, I'm her mommy.
On Mother's Day, I think it's important to remember that trans women can be mothers too. And this morning, my son remembered.
We're going to have even greater water bills, soaring bills, a time of prices already being hiked. You know, we have to pay a lot for food. That's tough if you're a mum like me, already struggling to get the things that my kid needs.
Some of these women describe the feeling as these men just showing up to claim something that they'd not actually taken any real part in. They didn't grow this child, feed this child, they were not pregnant, they didn't sacrifice their bodies at all, and yet they want to be called mum and referred to as a mother?
This Mother's Day is especially significant for me because it's the first Mother's Day that I am celebrating since coming out as trans and starting HRT. At church this Sunday morning, they gave all the moms carnations and letters saying Happy Mother's Day, and I was happy to be a recipient of one of those. I took it home and showed my daughter, and who is 8, and she said, "But you're not a mom." I said, "Well, yes, I am." And she said, "No, you're not." And the reason she said that is because my wife doesn't allow her to call me mom. I'm known as parent. I said to her, well, I'm a mom, whether you acknowledge that or not. I am still a mom.
It's almost like they want to cosplay as mothers and push out the real mother who was there all along. So it's like not super surprising why these women are very angry. It seems that progressives and trans rights activists are very comfortable redefining motherhood to validate themselves. Destruction of actual motherhood be damned. And they seem to believe in order to be valid in their identity, they must bully others and force society to conform to their wants and desires. The most telling thing is knowing that these individuals, who are most often biological males, are doing so knowing full well they will never be able to do any of the things that women do, especially when it comes to the very complex and amazing processes of producing offspring. For whatever reason, males who believe themselves to be women believe they are entitled to redefine our understandings of motherhood and mothers to accommodate their emotional needs. And somehow they've gotten politicians, the legal system, and even the medical system to join them in this delusion. Ultimately, I am of the view that mothers deserve so much more respect than what our culture is currently giving them. And watching mums be subjected to all of this nonsense in order to appease a small portion of the population is offensive in ways I can't even articulate. In the end, nothing can take away from women just how special motherhood actually is. But sadly, and I don't think this gets discussed enough, it will actually be the children who ultimately pay the price for the confusion of adults. Now, before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder to check out Factor using the link in the description. They have a ton of meal options on offer, as well as yummy little snacks and bits and pieces. Definitely worth checking out. Go and do it and use my link. Now, I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Are you a mum who is genuinely feeling quite degraded and unhappy with the current state of the conversations around motherhood and pregnancy and breastfeeding? Are you somebody who doesn't think this is that big of a deal? And actually you're kind of happy that we're including other people in the motherhood discussion? What do you make of the chest feeding conversation, of the induced lactation? What do you make of these people talking about getting uterus transplants? What do you think of the way that society is trending as far as motherhood goes? Do you think that we are degrading it? Do you think that we are parodying it? Do you think that this is not great? Do you think this is fine? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you made it this far in the video, congratulations. You know I like having you along for the full ride. If you are not subscribed already and you would like to see more of me and more of this channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button, as well as leaving this video a like and a comment. I do read the majority of them and I really like hearing your feedback. Of course, as well, if you have any video suggestions, let me know. But in the meantime, in the interim, I will see you wonderful, lovely, pretty people in the next video.